Okay, so welcome everybody. I hope everyone has their lunch and they're all comfortable and warm. Thanks for taking a lunch break with us. I am Becky Jean Thompson. I am a realtor with Coldwell Banker Realty. This is a lunch break series that happens every 2 weeks where I come to you and share information about the housing market, any tips and tricks that I have that I might not post on Facebook, but you'll only get live here. And I have guest speakers. So today we have attorney Mark Najim from the Najim and Kling Law Offices in Northampton. He is going to be chatting with you about some hot topics in the legal field of real estate. Yeah, so I hope that you have your lunch and you're ready and comfortable. So just wanted to review a little bit about the market and about that groundhog Phil saying there's 6 more weeks of winter. That doesn't mean that you should list your house now. Don't wait until spring. I think waiting until spring is what some people are doing. Right, Mark?
Yes, certainly. Every year.
They're going to have more competition out there. And if you do it now, you have less competition. And there are so many buyers looking. There's not enough inventory. I know I said that 2 weeks ago when you saw me. Still saying it. I think I'm going to be saying that for a little while at least. We have so many buyers in certain price points that are looking, and the inventory that's out there is just flying off the shelves. So just since the beginning of 2021, there have been 278 homes sold, single-family homes sold in Hampton County. 305 have gone under agreement. And right now, currently, there's 237 single families on the market, but those price ranges are just, that price range is huge. It's from 55,000 up to 4.2 million. No. So when you think that's a lot, there's a lot of homes out there. That price range is so huge that when you delve into the price range that you may be looking for, or that certain buyers are, there's really not a lot of inventory out there. So Mark is going to talk about something that a lot of people have been thinking about lately, and that's investing in real estate. So when people think of purchasing a home, sometimes they think of purchasing a multifamily, and they can do it owner occupied, right? They can live in one side or live on one floor, sure, and rent it out and make some money. Potentially, sure, that tenant could be paying for them to live there, right? Paying that mortgage. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about that, Mark?
So yeah, just to add to what you were saying earlier about jumping in now as opposed to waiting, you know, as the economy improves, the interest rates might go up. So, you know, the interest rates, I mean, they always say historic low. This is certainly, I've been doing this for 30 years. This is the lowest I've seen it ever. But as far as investing in real estate, yeah, the simplest way that a lot of people get into it is they buy a 2-family, buy a 3-family. They're living in one of the units, renting out the other 2 or 1 or 2 units. And then 2-3 years down the road, they move up to another house, maybe buy a single family, but keep the investment property, keep the other as an investment. So a couple of things I thought would be helpful to know or be interesting. With a 1 to 4 family, a lot of the lenders still will let you go through the residential real estate side of things. You don't have to go to a commercial lender. And what that means is you get the interest rates and the process of getting a loan is on the residential side, and sometimes that's easier and less painful than perhaps being on the commercial side. If you get beyond a 4-family, you're going to have to go with a commercial loan. There's almost no two ways about it. So that's and I think the rates are typically higher. The commercial, I think they're still around 4 now. I could be wrong. If you get a good deal, you probably get under that. But the commercial, you also don't often get a 30-year fix. It's usually, sometimes it's a 5-year fix, sometimes it's 10. So that's another reason why 1 to 4 families might be more attractive for investment. So that's one point. The second thing is, say you're going to buy a condo. Not all lenders will loan to all condominium projects. Sometimes you have to worry about how many units there are and whether the condo is approved for the whole range of financing. And sometimes you have to find a lender that does what they call portfolio lending. It means that they keep it in-house and they don't sell the loan. But that's, the interest rates may change in there. So that's something to worry about if you're buying it. So you're buying a condo and you're going to rent it out, or you buy a condo and then you're intending to live there for a year and then move on and rent it out after that. That's something to be concerned about. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, when you're buying investment property, say you're buying 1 to 4 family, say it's a 3-family property, and most people like to buy with property that's vacant, that has no tenants, because then you can start on your own, get your own tenants. You don't have to inherit tenants. However, maybe you are buying a property and there's 1 or 2 tenants that have been there for a long time and they're stable, and you want to keep them. So what's critical is you need copies of all the leases or rental agreements or anything that's in place. You want to confirm what there is in place for security deposits, last month's rents. There's very, very strict laws that govern what happens to the security deposit when you take over it, what happens to last month's rents, the notices you have to give tenants, and so forth. What I like to do is I like to get sometimes they call it an estoppel certificate. There's different words for it, but essentially it's a document that says, okay, here are the units. Here's what the rent is every month. Here's what the security deposit is that we're holding. Here's the last month's rent. You get the landlord to sign and you get the tenant to sign. And then if the tenant signs something like that, you take over the property and then something happens and you end up in housing court, then you have something signed by the tenant saying, we acknowledge that this is what was there when Mark Nijane took over the property. And that's going to be critical, because otherwise what the tenant will do typically in the housing court is they'll go in and say, well, the security deposit was this, the last month's rent was this, and if you can't prove that otherwise, you may be stuck with their number, which is something you don't want to be.
Right. That's great advice.
So and anything else, any other questions you might think people would raise in an investment property, or that's kind of the top of the mind?
Yeah, I think right now with housing and there being the order that you have to keep your tenants because of COVID, I think
Right.
that's, a whole other issue. But I
Sure.
think people, are thinking, if I become a landlord, and that happens and I'm not going to get paid from a potential tenant who's unable to pay because of things out of their control, what steps can I take? And I know that the state and the feds have put in place that you can apply for assistance on behalf of your tenants so that you can get reimbursed for back rent. Mm-hmm. But what steps can be taken?
So it was a great point, because right now there's a federal moratorium on evictions. Mm-hmm. and foreclosures, by the way, but we're talking about tenancies. So there's a foreclosure moratorium on evictions until the end of March. And there's no telling, it's likely they'll extend that. And I haven't checked, there was a moratorium, and I believe there still is in Massachusetts. So you've got the federal, you've got the state, you got two different authorities. And basically they're saying you can't evict anyone. So somebody not paying rent, I guess that's another point. If you're getting into investment of real estate, you should try to have as much in reserve as you can in case you're facing 2-3 months where the tenant's not paying any rent, and you still have to pay your mortgage, typically in that situation. I know that you can get, there's potential for getting the lender will wait for that, but the ideal situation is you can still pay your mortgage. But yeah, with the eviction moratoriums, the landlord's often between a rock and a hard place, and there's no forgiveness for, okay, I own half of the property and I rely upon the unit number 2 to pay my mortgage. Right. All of a sudden the tenant's not paying. for whatever reason, then you're out of luck. So that's an important point. You should really have the backup plan there, especially in these times.
Right. And I think the having the 2 to 3 months of reserves is important regardless whether you own a multifamily,
Sure.
a single family, a condo. Having that for the backup
right.
just in case is always important. So solar panels, I know that that's a hot topic lately.
Sure.
Around here, and seeing we were just talking before we started recording and going on live about how lengthy those lease agreements can be for solar. So we're seeing it more and more on houses that are sold. We're seeing buyers jump at homes that have solar thinking it's the latest and greatest, and they
Right.
think it's fantastic. And you have other buyers that are like, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. It's all a matter of preference. So what have you seen as an attorney in real estate transactions when it comes to having solar on a home that's either being purchased or sold, depending on which side of the fence you're on?
Sure. So you want to make sure that everybody in the transaction knows that there are solar panels. The attorney needs to know that. And the reason is I just been involved in sale of property. There's leased solar panels on the roof, and the buyer decided that she would assume the lease, that it was worthwhile. So the attorney for the buyer wanted to know, okay, where's the agreement? They want a copy of the agreement. They want to know what the terms are for the new owner to assume the lease. But the issue was, in terms of selling the property, was one, getting in touch with, I had to get permission to talk to the solar company because they wouldn't talk to me without my client's authorization. So that took a week. And then after that, we took another week for the, what the solar companies will do is, and I've had two of these, one with a refinance, one with a sale, they put a UCC financing statement. If you don't know what that is, it's not important, but essentially it's like a lien on the property. So they put that on record at the registry of deeds. So when you're looking at the title or the ownership of the property, it appears as a lien on the property. It has to be released, or it has to be subordinated to the new mortgage. So that took another week to get the release. On my refinance, it took more than that. It took several weeks to get the subordination from the lender that lent the money to put the solar panels up and so forth. So those are, I mean, you have to plan ahead. Those are issues that you plan ahead when you're selling or refinancing.
Yeah, and I think it's important to make sure that if you're buying, you go to your agent and say, I need that documentation. I need the lease agreement. And again, it could be 42 pages. They are lengthy. I could be exaggerating
Yep.
by a couple pages, but they are pretty lengthy. And you have to understand what is contained in there. You know, what it's going to cost you if you have to remove those solar panels for any reason, if there's any issue with the roof, what that lease is going to look like, how many years left, what that monthly payment will be, what will happen if you don't pay that monthly payment. So I think understanding all of that before you say, this is the house I want, is important too. And in this market, because things are moving pretty quickly, having that information and digesting it, you need help, right? So it could be where you need your real estate attorney to say, this is the document, can you go through this and give me the high level points? Hey, real estate agent, can you get this document? Can you give me the high level points? And making sure that you're understanding what you're jumping into.
So, and even on the refinance that I was mentioning, we had to, even so the solar panels were there, and obviously they were still living in the house. We're going to continue to live in the house, but the problem was that the lender didn't know about the UCC financing statement, and that had to factor into so they were trying to refinance, and you know, it stalled things for about a month because the lender had to figure out what to do with that. Then we had to talk to the company that had the UCC financing statement, get it subordinated. So if you're looking to do something, you know, in as you said, quickly, that's something you need ahead of time. And we didn't find it out until I did the title search to for the title commitment for the refinance. That's when we found out. And I said, hey, do you know that this is on record? The owner didn't know, because with UCCs, the owner doesn't have to sign them. So the company can just put them on essentially without, I mean, I'm sure it's in the paperwork. Oh, we're going to put a UCC, but nobody really understands that. It's just like home equity loans. People don't understand that they put a mortgage on record, which is another point. If you're selling a house and you got a home equity line, that's something you have to wrestle with. Sometimes it takes a little more time to get that get ready for sale if you've got a home equity line.
Yeah, valid points. So another reason why, picking a good team of people, whether you're looking to buy or sell, is so important. And as a first-time home buyer, and sometimes when you're selling and then buying, you may forget the process because it's so wonderful. Sometimes it's kind of like having a baby. It's so wonderful when you finally have the baby or have the home, you forget about the whole process beforehand. But I think having a team of people that you trust, that work well together, that you can go to and say, what is this? What happened? Or have someone that knows the background of, it's got solar panels, Mark, it's got solar panels, and you're like, whoo, okay, we have to check this, this, and this. Right. So having a team of people, and that team to help you get to the closing table includes a real estate attorney, your mortgage lender, your real estate appraiser who is hired by your lender, your real estate agent. So it is a team of people really working vigorously in the background to get you to sign that paper, to give you those keys to that home. So from the time that offer is accepted, I'm in contact with the real estate attorney saying, here you go, here's everything you need, now let's get rolling. What exactly does and I know this is a question that people think of, what am I paying my real estate attorney to do besides everything that you just mentioned? What do you do in the background, Mark?
So this is when I do my first time, just did a first time home buyer presentation, obviously via Zoom, Saturday for Springfield Partnership. And it's one of the things, a year or so ago, I did I guess it's going to be 2 years this spring. We did an open house. Wayfinders did an open house in Springfield for first-time homebuyers, and people said, "I didn't even realize I needed an attorney to do a closing. What does the attorney do?"
Yeah.
Well, what I compare it to is that the attorney's like a general contractor when you're building a house. So you go to the attorney, and the attorney is going to have somebody do the title. They're going to have somebody do the survey, the little plan that they do with the property. They have to work with the title insurance company. Your attorney takes care of the title insurance that you're required to get. We work with your lender. We kind of fold all that together. And the buyer's attorney also does the financial piece. In other words, when you come to closing, you bring a check to the attorney. The bank, your lender, your mortgage lender will send wire funds to the attorney. And we put it all together in something called a client funds account. And then we write checks. We write checks to the seller. We write checks to the seller's lender. So we get rid of their mortgage and all the other things, title insurance and so forth and so on. And one of the primary things the attorney does is search the title. So we're by Massachusetts law, we have to go back at least 50 years. You go back 50 years and you find a good starting deed, which may be 50 years ago, maybe 60, 70, whatever it is. And then you come forward and you search all the owners from 50 years ago to now to make sure that when you buy the property, that you're the only owner, that you're not going to have somebody knock on your door in 2 years saying, yeah, my Uncle Edward left me a 1/4 of your house. Right. And by the way, give me $20,000 because, I want to be bought out. By the way, title insurance will also take care of that. That's why you get title insurance. But I know I work with a firm that does that. All they do is title examinations. So they're that's their field. That's what they do. And so I let them do that piece. So that's another part of the general contractor. But basically we do coordinating. And one point that you made which I try to talk to first-time homebuyers about is that you typically real estate attorneys charge a set fee. So it's a fixed fee. It could be sometimes it's a lot of work. Sometimes it's easier. They're not easy. None of them are easy. Otherwise, you would need an attorney or a realtor. But basically, you know, you pay the attorney that one fee, whether I get involved before the offer or before the purchase and sale. You should never sign a purchase and sale without an attorney looking at it. But no matter what point I get involved, it's typically the same fee. So I say, why not get involved? Why not hit the attorney on board as you start to look for a house? Okay, I'm starting to look for a house. We're going to be making offers. I've already been to the lender, gotten pre-approved. I'm working with this realtor, and do you have time to fit another closing into your book? And so that's the point where you get your lender, your realtor, and your attorney kind of lined up, and they're working together, keeping them all coordinated. And that's the way to go with that. So, that's it. I think that's, as far as I can tell, what the attorney, in a nutshell, does during a transaction.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're the last person they see as
Yes.
they're signing those papers. And on the buyer side, that's a lot of papers.
That's right. We get the package it says 100 pages, 112 pages, and you sigh because there's like 3 documents that deal with one topic, and it's just it's daunting.
It is. But
they're starting to go a little bit more online. I had one that was half of the documents where they just clicked the night before, they clicked, or the morning of.
Wow.
We're starting to see that.
Yeah, and now things are, because the registries are still closed, you have to file everything at the Registry of Deeds online and then sit and wait for it to be accepted and approved, right? So instead of just walking over to the registry, you're now having to upload documents, sign documents, and then waiting. So that could take a couple hours after signing. So I think with COVID, everybody's sort of getting adjusted to that. But as a first-time home buyer, they don't know the difference, right? Pre-COVID or not. So I think for us, I think we were talking about this too previously, in the COVID world that we're in right now, that's one of the things that we're adjusting to, having the time to wait to get on record with the documents, perhaps going to your office and keeping that social distance while the documents are being signed, and you having to know in what order the paperwork is in so that you can explain it when they have questions, having your own set, right? So you can flip through with them.
Right.
And when it was nicer out, running outside with a packet of documents for them to sign in their car.
Yes. Yeah. As I was saying, we have a little an outside picnic table here, and when the weather was still nice, we actually had a number of closings. We sat out on the picnic table, and people were more comfortable being outside. I mean, obviously, it's you've got more airflow, but now we have a conference room that has an 8-foot long conference table, and so we sit at one end, and I peer across to see what documents they're looking at, and try to explain everything. And it's been working. It's a little frustrating. I like being able to point things out to people and kind of go through details, but it's working out. And so as you mentioned, what you do for those of you who haven't been through the process, on the day of the closing, typically you'll either the night before or the morning of, you'll with your realtor do a walkthrough, and then you go to the attorney's office with your check and with your 2 forms of ID and your mask, and you're signing documents for approximately an hour. And then you go away, and then at some point shortly after that point, we scan and email the documents to the Registry of Deeds, and as soon as they're on record, then you can go into the house and start moving in. The other thing we have to wait for is the wire from the lender, and sometimes, so if your lender's one of the national lenders and they're wiring from California, sometimes it doesn't show up right away. Sometimes it's a waiting time. So I always tell the lenders, if you're a lender, then block your ears. I always tell the lenders we're closing at 9 a.m. so that they think that I need the money right away instead of, I mean, basically my best time I think is around 11 because that way you have the morning to do your walkthrough and any last minute adjustments with the lender, and then the documents are signed by noon, and then you can go on record shortly after, but you still have the afternoon for some space to fit in whatever emergency is happening.
Right. Yep. It's perfect. It's perfect. And I love to do walkthroughs the morning of instead of the night before, because it puts me at ease to know that nothing has happened overnight.
Yep. Yeah. I'll always remember this is investment property nightmare. Property in Springfield, my client bought at a bank-owned real estate, and there was a delay. And I think we closed on a Friday, and he didn't take ownership till Monday or something like that. He goes to the property, and the windows are gone. And somebody went in over the weekend and took out windows, took out plumbing, and this and that. And so, that's a snarl because so we did a closing on paper, but we didn't actually record till Monday. So whose insurance pays, that, and so that was no fun at all. So I agree with you. Morning of is a good time.
Yeah. Definitely puts me at ease, and I prefer that. Because the morning before a closing, I think I'm just as anxious as the buyers are. It's one of those things. I'm so vested, personally vested. I'm excited for them and make sure everything is smooth. So yeah. I think that covers about all the topics that we discussed, unless you have something else, Mark.
Do we want to talk about, we talked about LLCs, S Corps, ownership, why you would form one,
yes.
How does that work? Is that something worth talking about?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, the easiest form of ownership is an individual putting it in their own name.
Yeah.
Okay. Or if there's two people, say you have a partner, two of you put it in your own name, two of you own it, which makes it a general partnership essentially. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when people getting a little more serious about investing in real estate, they're looking into owning the property in an LLC, which is a limited liability company, or an S Corp. So the question is, why would you do that? What's the benefit? What's the pros and cons?
Right.
Okay, so there's two main issues. One is liability, and the second is taxes. Okay, so those are really the major reasons why you put property in an LLC versus individual. So liability, what's the issue there? Well, okay, so if I'm in my 20s and I don't own a house and I have like $100 in the bank, and my credit cards are like $1,000 limit, if you buy a piece of investment property because you're starting out, all you have is the property, so you're not, the liability is less. Okay, but flash forward 20 years, you have maybe 3 properties and your own property, maybe you have a vacation home or a boat or something, and you have retirement, some money in the bank. So basically what you don't want something happening on one of your properties that takes your personal assets down. So if somebody sues because of lead paint, or they slip and fall, or something happens on the property. So what you don't want is that affecting your personal assets. So the easiest way to separate investment property from your personal property, I mean, of course, you want a homestead on your property, your residence, to protect your residence. That's your first line of defense. But separately, if you put your investment property, say you have you've built it up, so now you have 3 or 4 properties, 2 families, let's say. So you could form an LLC, a limited liability company. In order to do that, you have to file with the Secretary of State. It's the filing fee is $500, and you form the LLC and put take ownership. So instead of having Mark Nejame be the owner, the LLC, Mark Nejame LLC would be the owner of the 3 properties. And that way, if something happens and they want to sue the owner of the property and your insurance doesn't cover it, they're suing the LLC. And the LLC is separate from Mark Nejame individually. And there's a firewall between the individual and the LLC, which blocks people from coming after your personal assets because of something that happened on the property. And the second reason is taxation. And what I like to do, essentially, somebody comes to me and says, well, I'm thinking about this. And I say, well, what you want to do is have a conversation with your accountant, because some accountants prefer S corps, some accountants prefer LLCs, some don't really. Some say whatever works for you. LLCs are less complicated. It's fairly simple. You file the articles of organization, and sometimes you have typically you have an operating agreement. You pull a tax ID number, and you're pretty much ready to go. You can open a bank account with that and so forth. S corps are a little more complicated, but there are tax reasons why some accountants prefer S corps, and that's a conversation you should have with your tax advisor. Gotcha. So those are the two reasons. What are the downside? Well, a limited liability company costs $500 in the filing fee. I typically charge another $1,000 to do the setup, the operating agreement, the EIN number, and so forth. Every year you've got to pay that $500. So that's something to consider. I know that a couple of people I know had an LLC for their business, and they decided that it wasn't worth the $500. They weren't making enough to really justify it, and the liability issue didn't scare them enough that they wanted to keep the LLC. And as a corporation, the annual fee is less, but in Massachusetts you have to file a separate tax return for a corporation, and there's a minimum tax. And lo and behold, by the time you're done with its filing fee and the minimum tax, it's around $500. So they get you coming and going, as they say. So the downside is that, and also, I mean, it's a little more complicated. It may cost you more to get your tax return done. There's a little more paperwork, but definitely if you have any kind of assets that you don't want interfered with, it's a good idea. And you can have one LLC put all the properties in, and sometimes people have one LLC for each property. That might be overkill. You might not need to do that, just one for 2 or 3 properties, whatever you have, and use that for your investment. So that's the reason, I think, why people would do that or not do that. I think that's kind of the other thing to worry about too is if you're in a general partnership, you really have to worry about this, because whatever one partner does, liability of one partner can flow over into the other partner. So if your other partner is doing something, maybe they're a little bit more risk tolerant than you are, and they're doing something that puts risk on you as a partner, you've got to be careful of that. And then if you're in an LLC, then the risk is really the LLC, not your personal assets. So that's a really good reason why an LLC is a good idea, at least to investigate.
So once you sell your investment properties, what do you do with your LLC?
So what people are buying and selling in the LLC, and if you decide at some point that you don't want to do that anymore, you retire, you just like, okay, get rid of all your property, you can terminate the LLC. What some people do is, this LLC owns this one property. You can transfer the LLC to another individual, and they can just take it over. In that case, you have a little concern about putting a firewall between you and the buyer, because you don't want anything to come back and bite you, but that's also possible. So the LLC, the other thing in an LLC is that if you're doing estate planning and you're worried about, say you have 3 children and you want to pass property on to them, you can transfer the shares in the LLC to your children, and they can just take it over, and then the deed, the ownership of the property can stay in the LLC, but the members of the LLC can change. So that's also a way to estate plan, succession planning.
And you do estate planning at your office as well, correct?
Right. My wife is the primary attorney. It's we actually met in law school, and so it's Nijam and Kling. She's Kling. I'm Nijam, and so yeah, she does a lot of the estate planning. And one of the tools we employ is the LLC to kind of succession planning. That's one way of doing it.
Gotcha. All right, awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, if anybody has any questions after everything that we've been through, if you want to shoot a comment below or send either one of us a message, we can answer it and either shoot you a message or actually post it on the page so that everyone else can see the question and the answer to it. It might be helpful to someone else as well. Mark, thank you for taking a lunch break with us today. I hope you either had a chance to eat before or you're going to go now.
Yeah, now's the time. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you soon, okay?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.